Welcome back to another episode of Peeping Ballers. I'm your host, Albert. Have the pleasure of being joined today by Lee Kang-in's number one fan, Paul Jung, calling in from Vegas. Paul, we got a lot to talk about today. Transfer rumors swirling in the world of football that PSG midfielder Lee Kang-in could be on the verge of a winter transfer to a few EPL teams. Paul, what have you been hearing on social media and your initial thoughts to this news?
It was pretty surprising. I'm not gonna lie. Our boy's been getting a lot of playing time, especially as of late. So I didn't really expect any rumors to come out in regards to him during winter transfer window here. But here we are. Getting a few big teams out there. Arsenal obviously being the first there with their injury situation with Saka and being a little short-handed. I guess it does make a little bit of sense. I just didn't think it'd come there from there. And then obviously you got a couple other EPL teams to mention, whether it's Manchester United and Newcastle, who he's been linked with before. So very interesting teams, all big names, obviously. I think a lot of the Koreans are excited because EPL is the league for them, so they want their guys to be there. And with Sonny getting a little older and Hee-chan kind of not really in the mix as much anymore. You kind of want a big name playing big minutes at a big club. So a move like that would be very interesting for him.
Yeah, I mean, we have to remember that PSG bought Lee Kang-in for around 22 million euros. I believe it was from Mallorca. Pretty big price for any Asian player, I think. And now what we've been hearing is that PSG want at least, I think, 40 million plus if they're going to sell him. But I mean, the winter transfer window, people just, a lot of people don't seem to realize that it's not really the window where you make big moves. I mean, you could, like very rarely, but most teams do like their big money shopping in the summer when they have more time to prepare, squad planning and whatnot. I just, given where PSG are, like you said, and with Luis Enrique at the helm and how much he values Lee Kang-in, I just can't see the PSG board consenting to selling practically one of their most creative midfielders on the team alongside Vitinha, I think. So it doesn't make sense because, I mean, PSG right now, looking at the Ligue 1 table, they're first, got a 7-point lead on Marseille. I mean, 7 points is a lot, but it's not insurmountable. And Enrique's under pressure, man, because PSG have not played well in recent months, especially in the Champions League. So from a team building perspective, this makes zero sense. And then we look at the teams that were mentioned in the Prem that he could go to. Arsenal. I mean, Odegaard's the number 10 there, unless he goes down with an injury. Kanye's not playing meaningful minutes. United. I mean, he would play there, but I don't think you and I, besides Korean United fans, would want him anywhere near that dumpster fire of a club right now. Newcastle, again, decent squad, but up and down in recent years. Like sometimes they're a top 4 team, sometimes they're not. From my selfish perspective, I think Kang-in is good enough to play for a top 4 EPL team. And for me, him going to Newcastle would be almost akin to like Sonny going to Tottenham. The fit isn't there right now. If Kang-in goes to Arsenal, where is he going to play? He's not going to play as a 10. He can't play out wide on the right side because that's Bukayo Saka's spot. So
No,
I
but
think
I think that's the point that people are trying to make. How it makes sense is because Saka had that hamstring injury, so he's out
right.
for like the next 2 months.
But
So if they're desperate enough and still clinging on to the chance of winning the
right.
title, which I know it seems like Liverpool to lose, but Arsenal hasn't been playing good ball as of late.
Yeah.
They just got wiped in the Carabao Cup 2-0 by Newcastle of all teams, and didn't look good. Struggled to create offense and stuff like that. I think Saka plays a pretty pivotal role for that team. So missing that, and I know they had a younger player to back him up, but he also got injured. So they're pretty thin over on the right wing. So I get it. But at the same time, it's just from PSG's vantage point, I just don't see it happening unless some ridiculous bid comes in, over, over the 40 million asking price that we're talking about here. I think that would have to happen for PSG to even consider. I think that's the rumor too. Is like they're not even going to come to the table unless you come with something at least 40 million plus for them. That would have to happen for talks to even begin.
Even if he went to Arsenal, like he and Saka are both quality players, but they also play completely different games. I think Bukayo is
Yeah,
more of a direct player where he'll take his guy on and shoot.
yeah.
To be fair, Bukayo does create a lot of chances. You can pass the ball, but Kang-in's more. I mean, Kang-in is not a pure winger like Bukayo, right? He's just a midfielder who is forced to play out wide, and then he kind of dribbles past a few guys and then finds a cross-field pass to the other wing. Not really a similar profile, but you're right. I mean, like PSG, just they can't afford to lose Kang-in. I think maybe in the summer is when we could see Lee Kang-in moving to the Prem, but he's also really young. I think he's about 22, 23 right now.
23, yeah,
He's 23. Physically and skill-wise, I think he is good enough to play in the Prem right now. It's just a matter of going to a team that's a good fit, because when you go to the best league in the world, it's not just about being, good enough to play in that league. It's about finding the right team, finding the right manager. So, Paul, if we look at, the future, right, past this transfer window, even if I look into the future right now, I can't see any really top teams that can challenge for titles where Kang-in would be a good fit, because we already talked about Arsenal, we talked about United, Chelsea.
There is one team.
There is one. Okay, maybe
there is one team.
Maybe I won't mention it, but in my opinion, I think Chelsea. Palmer's the 10, best player in the league so far this year besides Mohamed Salah, I think. So Kang-in's not going there. Maybe Kang-in can play out wide for Chelsea, but again, his future isn't on the wing. I think we all can agree on that. Man City,
That's
maybe.
Where I was gonna.
That's
that's
what
where I
you
was
say. Okay,
going
but
with.
my
Just because of the constant talk with De Bruyne going to MLS, San Diego,
yeah,
a spot would open up from there.
and
I know his play style kind of is similar to Foden's, and I do see that. But I just feel like they're in almost a transitional stage here pretty soon with some of their aging players, and they kind of have to get that replaced. And obviously, they haven't been playing well either. So it seems like a change is needed there, almost like to kind of shift from what they're doing right now, bring in some younger guys, kind of rejuvenate that squad a little bit. And especially if KDB goes, I think that's a huge hole for them as far as like a creator goes. And if we really want Lee Kang-in to play centrally, I mean, who better to replace De Bruyne than Lee Kang-in in that system?
I don't disagree with any of the points you made, but my one thing is, and this could be crazy, just I don't know how much Pep Guardiola rates Asian players.
I mean, who knows if he'll be there? That's
Yeah,
the other
I
thing.
mean,
It seems
yeah,
like they're close to the last dance stage of that team. It seems like, especially with Pep. I don't know how much longer he's going to be there. And if Kang-in goes in the summer and Pep's gone, then who knows? Whole system could change. Tactically, everything could change. So you just never know what's going to happen there. So that's a big question mark with Man City. But going back to Arsenal, it's just, I get it. Again, I get it from their standpoint. Maybe if this was last year when Lee Kang-in was kind of not really getting as many minutes as he is right now, I could kind of see that. But there's other players I think on PSG that most likely will be on the move that were getting minutes at some point but aren't now, whether that's Kolo Muani to Tottenham or Asensio not getting minutes right now, and a couple other guys that they got to get rid of before even considering our boy Kang-in.
it doesn't. I don't see fits anywhere. I mean, maybe
I
besides
don't.
City,
I
like
think the
you
hype
said.
is just it's so real because I think Korean people are so excited of the possibility of him going to the EPL because that's the league everybody wants to watch. Even today watching Spurs play against Liverpool, I don't think it's the physicality or even the speed of the players that would bother Kangin. The overall pace of the game is just so much faster. I think that's a
Yeah.
huge adjustment for players playing in other leagues than coming to the Premier League is just how fast the game is. It's kind of crazy when you think about it and you watch, teams press and the pace of the game and being able to withstand that pressure. That's a lot for I think players coming from other leagues to adjust to. I think that would be a huge adjustment for him too. To be honest, there would definitely be a learning curve coming from playing, especially in Enrique's system, which is a lot slower, possession based, to come into a league where you probably don't have that kind of time to think or make decisions, and it's got to be chop chop. I do worry about that a little bit. Again, I don't worry about the pace of the players because I think he can utilize the pace of the players around him, like his teammates, being more of a playmaker and not really taking people on, as we were talking about. I don't think that's his biggest strength, like you were saying when comparing him to like a Saka. I think his biggest strength is being able to control the ball quickly in the midfield and make quick decisions and accurate passes. And that could be on full display in the EPL if he has the talent and the team around him.
he's still gonna have to prove himself in the Prem no matter where he goes. I don't think he'll start right away no matter where he plays. He's gonna have to take over someone's job in a sense, because that's what happened to Sonny. When Sonny moved from Leverkusen to Tottenham, I remember for the first year, he hardly played. And after that first year, there were rumors that he wanted to go back to Germany, that he was thinking about going to signing with Wolfsburg, and that Pochettino convinced him to stay, and then he became, the Son Heung-min that we know today. It is clear for both of us that Kang-in eventually is good enough to play in the Premier League. Now, I know a lot of, probably Arsenal fans might be watching this video and they might be asking, so you compare him to Son Heung-min, like what kind of player is he? And we have to say that he is not a similar player at all. This is, if Sonny is more of a wide player, like a direct guy, and Lee Kang-in is much more of a guy who likes to kind of just get stuck in the middle. Like I said, do all the dirty work in the middle of the field. So, for comparing players, it's not really a Thierry Henry situation with Lee Kang-in. He's more of a Luka Modric maybe, or like a Mesut Ozil. But yeah, Paul, what would you say to these like Prem fans who are getting hyped about Lee Kang-in, but wonder how similar he is to other Korean players that they've seen in the past?
He's unlike most Korean players, I think. I think most of the guys that EPL fans are used to seeing are fast, explosive players. They're good in space. He's obviously more technically gifted than most Korean players and plays more like a Spanish player. I mean, people have to understand that he's not really Korean. I mean, he's been in Spain since he's like 7. So more time was spent in Spain than in his own country. So he's really a Spanish guy if you think about it through and through. And he plays like one. So, when you're talking about going back to La Liga, I think that makes a lot of sense, especially with a team like Atleti, with Griezmann kind of getting older and him also rumored to go to EPL, to Major League Soccer. If that happens, then obviously the spot opens up for him there. So, and they've had interest in him for years, even when he was back in Mallorca. So that makes a whole lot of sense. But the type of player that you're getting, like you said, is a Luka Modric type of midfielder. Technically very clean with the ball, doesn't lose the ball, accurate with the ball. And I think one aspect of his game that, unfortunately doesn't get spotlighted much at PSG because they don't have a lot of height and power there is his set pieces. Corners and stuff like that. He can really put in accurate balls into the box. And going back to the Arsenal rumor, they're deadly on set pieces, and adding him to that mix would just amplify that those dead ball situations. So I can see it coming from their perspective of why they would try to go after him. It's just that timing wise, like you said, I don't think it's a good time for PSG because they need him. Again, they're struggling in Champions League, so they kind of have to win their next games. They have Man City and Stuttgart left on their schedule that they are basically have to win at least one of those games in order to move on. They have a pretty comfortable league in Ligue 1, like you said, and they already have one trophy under the belt. So the season is going okay, minus the Champions League, but just based off his minutes, I think he has the 6th or 7th most minutes played on the roster this year. So it's like he's obviously an important part of the team. So I don't see him going anywhere unless a crazy bid does come in, which I just don't see it happening.
This might be crazy, but technically speaking, Lee Kang-in is like the most skilled Korean player that we've ever had. I'm not saying he's the GOAT. I'm not saying he's anywhere near the number of accomplishments that Son Heung-min or Park Ji-sung have had. People need to listen clearly. What I'm saying is that on the ball, as a pure footballer, he is the best Korean player we've ever seen. He literally is a midfield engine. We've never seen a Korean player that pass the ball the way he does, the way he can control a game, the way he can play different positions, the way, like you said, he can hit free kicks, corners. It's like having a Pirlo almost, right? I'm not saying he's as good as him, but we've never had that before, right? We've had a Sonny who's a forward, who's a pure striker, right? Somebody who will score in the final third, but maybe not provide much else outside of that. Whereas we have a kid here, and maybe he's not as good taking guys on one-on-one. Maybe he's not as good at finishing as Son Heung-min, but he's better at a lot of other things that impact the game. So it's just a different kind of profile that people are going to have to get used to. But, I mean, this kid is special, man. I mean, some of his other accomplishments, winning the Golden Ball at the 2019 U20 World Cup, practically almost dragging Korea to the final and almost beating Ukraine. Moving to Spain at such a young age, going through the Valencia system, playing at Mallorca, fighting for minutes, developing his game. Like Paul said, he's not really Korean. He's a Spanish player who has decided to play for Korea and still has a Korean passport. So we're very grateful for that. Since he is still so young, I would like him to focus on winning League this season, while also kind of elevating his performances with the national team. He's usually been very good for the KNT, but past few international windows, we've talked about how he's been a bit quiet because, teams in Asia are actually starting to double team him now, where they see him as a bigger threat than Son Heung-min. So I think he also needs to focus on that and, his relationship with Hong Myung-bo and and dealing with still like the after effects of the Asian Cup and Ping Pong Gate and whatnot. He will move eventually. Like it's a guarantee. It's just a matter of which club that he chooses. Paul, I guess to finish the video, if I put a gun to your head and I said, okay, where do you think Lee Kang-in is playing 2025 2026? What colors is he wearing?
White, red, and blue with Atletico Madrid.
Ooh,
That's kind of where I think he'll end up. It just seems like a good fit for him and a good position for him to take over once Griezmann leaves. He can kind of just replace him basically. I don't want to say they're identical players, but I think he can play that role to a T.
very similar.
He's Spanish, so going back to where he's comfortable. I mean, it's I think kind of a no-brainer. It just really comes down to I think that's the most logical choice for him, but is there that inkling of wanting to test himself in the EPL? I always wonder that. I mean, people always ask like, what Messi would have done in the EPL because he never did. So I always wonder like, oh, okay, how is this guy gonna do there? I think you can say the same for like Kim Min-jae and stuff like that. Like, is that ever gonna happen? I mean, he's playing at a top club at Bayern. I mean, obviously, you know that because that's your team, but um, he does. I don't think either have to move because whether it's Kim Min-jae or Lee Kang-in, they're playing for the best team in their respective leagues. So I don't think they don't have to, but it's really about whether or not they want to test themselves in the EPL. And if Lee Kang-in wants to do that, then I think the door's open for any team there. Um, Again, he'll just find the right fit. But if that's not a factor, my if you had a gun to my head, I would say Atletico Madrid for sure. And I mean, they've been interested in him since Mallorca, so it seems like the interest is mutual. It's not just like, oh, Egan wants to go there. It seems like a mutual thing. Barcelona, Real would be great, but I think those teams are so stacked with players of similar type of skill sets to him. So I don't know if that would be the best idea just as far as playing time goes, but it just seems like Atletico Madrid would just be a smart choice, at least in my opinion.
ooh, that's a good one. That's a really spicy one, and that's one that honestly I debated, but you took it, so that's a good one. Man, if I had to pick, I mean, I would say that I think he probably still stays at PSG for even another year. But if I said he was gonna move, I think he's smart enough to avoid United. I don't. I think the kid is really perceptive, almost to a fault at times. But the
But what
fact that
if
he
what
would,
if what if Amarin turns it around though? I know it's kind of a disaster right now, but what if?
I see that, but I also think that given his personality, which we won't get into in this video, for those who don't know about the kid, I don't think he'd want to play under the shadow of Park Ji-sung.
Mm,
Which is also why I don't think he's ever going to go to Tottenham either, because he does not want to play with Son Heung-min. Not that they don't like each other or anything, but I just think that that's just a personality clash that won't fit. Granted, Park Ji-sung isn't playing at United, but I think that the shadow of Park Ji-sung still lingers large for a lot of these Korean players, and that if he's going to want to adjust to England, not only is he going to want to go somewhere else where there's no history, but also maybe for a club that's a little more stable. You're right, Amorim could stabilize things, although I don't have much faith in that happening, not because he's a good manager, but just because I think the squad is utter crap. I'm going to go sneaky. I'm going to say I could see Lee Kang-in ending up at Newcastle.
mm,
Not that he's going to be there permanently, but just for him to kind of walk into the Prem, shall we say.
yeah. And
It
you
could,
pair him with Isak. Oof,
yeah. I mean, those
that
cherry
would
drops
be.
to Isak that
Oh
could
my
do a lot of
goodness.
damage, man. 20 plus
Yeah.
goals a year. I think,
And you know what?
yeah.
Newcastle's probably the only other team outside of Atletico that's been constantly, monitoring him
Yeah,
or
they
we,
wanted him when he was moving from Mallorca to
that's what I'm
PSG, I
saying.
think.
That team's always been in the rumor mill
Yeah.
for him. So the interest is obvious there. And that's one thing that I think we didn't talk about enough, or we didn't even bring up yet, as far as a factor, is that his marketing, as far as like the money that he would bring in, just from his reach out to Korea, as far as like tours and money, jersey sales, you name it. I think that's kind of in dispute, and you can kind of see it at PSG. At a big club like PSG, for a new guy to come in there and outsell Mbappe on jersey sales is, I mean, that's unheard of. So it's like when you factor that kind of stuff in, I think teams are really interested. He's entering the prime of his career, basically. Probably the next 4 or 5 years is going to be his prime, and teams want to get that. There's money to be made there. They can milk that cash cow like crazy with the the Korean jerseys and whatnot. Touring Asia and stuff. So it makes sense. It makes a whole lot of sense whether you're talking about money sense or just regular sense for teams to try to pick this guy up. Entering his prime. It's not like he's at the tail end of his career. Um, it makes a lot of sense. So I think, but as far as if it's not Atletico, I think Newcastle would be a pretty good spot because it's not maybe as sexy or big of a name as an Arsenal or a Man United, but they have quality players there. It seems like the team, as far as whether it's management or coaches, want him there, so they feel like he's a good fit for their team. They could use him too. It's not like he wouldn't get playing time, obviously. So that could definitely be it. My dream for him has always been Barcelona. I always thought that his play style kind of always fit that type of ball, but just given who they have, whether it's Yamal or Pedri and all these guys that kind of have fill those positions that he would play, I just don't see him getting playing time there. So realistically speaking, I think the two options that we gave make the most sense. But these Arsenal rumors are pretty fun and entertaining to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not an Arsenal fan, but if you moved there and you did well, I wouldn't care. I'm just concerned about.
I mean, Mike would be
Yeah.
ecstatic, first of all.
Yeah.
And it's they do need that band-aid. So I don't know if there's like a loan option, just to get him for a little bit and to send him back. I don't know. I mean, they wouldn't do that for a player that PSG for a player that they use. But again, given the hypothetical that he wasn't getting minutes and maybe he was riding the bench right now at PSG, then maybe I could see that. But given their situation right now and how much he's playing, and Enrique seems to really, really like his versatility and ability to play multiple positions. I just don't feel like he's going anywhere.
Yeah. And just to wrap up, I guess we'll track what happens over this year. But for Prem fans that are watching this video, I recommend watch some of these PSG games. Get a feel for how good he is on the ball, what he does, the things he doesn't do well, and then I think you'll form your own opinion of him and decide whether or not you're going to need him. In the meantime, don't forget to hit like and subscribe, guys. We'll cover more, not just Korean footballers, Asian football, European football, whatever, as we lead up to the 2026 World Cup. Thanks for watching. I'm Albert. That was Paul. We'll see you in the next one.
See you guys.